Yeah, so third stage, the first stage with the mountain finish. Really excited. I think the whole team feels really good. Like yesterday was a good day, with Alenus being fourth, and everyone stayed out of trouble and ready to go again today. And with Claire and me, we tried to be with the best climbers today at the finish.
You were ushered in to this episode of the Wheel Talk podcast, Giro d'Italia edition, by an audio diary from Mareille Meijering from Movistar before the start of the third stage. Now, I have a super special guest with me today, Rebecca Charlton, fresh off the commentary.
Hello. I've just sat back down after my excitement because I'm actually in the commentary booth now, and I was obviously bouncing off the walls with that victory.
It was such a good stage. I'm so excited to talk about it. We have the list of things to talk about is very long, and I don't really know what to start with because there were so many things that happened throughout the stage. I mean, we saw the profile, right, of this stage, and it's basically like flat climb. And the final bit of the climb, there was a little bit of reprieve, but the final bit was pretty steep. So I think some people were thinking, okay, this could be a biggish group and come down to like a sprint from the climbers. Some people were thinking this could impact the GC, which both things are kind of true in a way. But it came down to a very late race attack by Mavi Garcia. And then a counterattack by Niamh Fisher-Black, who rode solo to win the stage, the first rider from New Zealand to win a stage of the Giro. And a huge victory for her. She's been a favorite for races like this for years, and I feel like the timing has just never worked out great for her. But she said after the stage that there was something about this day that just felt right. And yeah, I think the best thing about the win was just how perfectly timed she made her move.
Definitely. And I think you have to have full commitment, don't you? We all know that, to take a stage victory like that in that sort of fashion with that amount of conviction. And she clearly had earmarked it, hadn't she, and said, right, this is one for me. But I was also really intrigued by the post-race interview of Lotte Kopecky, who said she needs to kind of back herself and actually go for those opportunities. So I think the happiness that we saw between those two with, I loved that Kopecky like rushed in and that slow-mo shot for like a hug at the end. And you could see what it meant to both of them actually. And Kopecky was absolutely buzzing, wasn't she, to talk about Niamh Fisher-Black taking it. But yeah, there's just so much to talk about there, isn't there? Because she believed it, she timed it perfectly. And Mavi Garcia looked so strong. But I think Niamh always knew that it was already a steep gradient, but there were a couple of kicks that it looked to go even steeper. And she just pounced at the right point. And then, look back once. I was going to say never look back. But yeah, she just knew she had it, pushed all the way to the line, of course. But she just had, I think, a bit of patience as well to just wait for that ultimate time to go. And it paid off. And I think she looked really overwhelmed actually on the podium. And again, in the post-race interview, like she gave quite short answers. And I think she was just going through her own motions in her head thinking, have I actually done this?
Yeah, I mean, there's always been, when you're on a team like SC Worx, and we've talked about it on the regular podcast all the time, there's always been so much pressure on her. And I feel like she's lived up to that pressure at times, but it's just to get a win at the Giro and the first hilltop win of the race is just such a huge accomplishment for her. And it's just so exciting to see. And I think she just rode the whole thing perfectly. They let Canyon SRAM take control of the pacing at the base of the climb. Canyon SRAM did a ton of damage to the peloton. They really shredded the peloton. And I mean, they had, Grace Brown second on GC going into the stage. She was out the back really early. They cracked Ruth Edwards, who was also a favorite for the GC after winning Turingen. They cracked Brodie Chapman, who was riding incredibly well at the moment. And then Mavi Garcia took over, and I think Mavi, her attack was great, but she'd already done so much work on the front at that point that there just wasn't enough left in the legs, that when Niamh went, there was no way that Mavi could have followed that. And she did end up getting caught by the next group to finish on the road, which was won by Lotte Kopecky, so SC Worx going 1-2, which I think is why, like, yes, this could have ended much differently because the climb was such a shallow climb for so long and then kicked at the end. Kopecky could have won this stage for sure. And her climbing today was, I mean, as good as it has been. She's just like such an amazing rider. And we need to talk about what this means for the GC that she climbed so well today. But it was a special climb, a special day, and both Little Trek and SC Worx-Protime just let everyone else do the work and then did what they needed to do. And it was perfection.
It was perfection. I'm trying to like unpick a few things that you mentioned in there because you just summarized everything so well. But I think, yeah, let's first talk about the work of Canyon Tram. I mean, Elise Shabby was just stunning on the front, how strong she was, but so long. And they were just so organized in that formation, weren't they? And they put so much work in. So that was kind of where it all kicked off. And we started seeing more and more riders that were really well positioned in the GC, as you've just sort of run through a few names there, just splintering off the back and being absolutely just absolutely drained by the pace on the front. Mavi Garcia, I think, yeah, I'd love your take on that, because I think she just looked, to me, I kept using the word metronome, because she was just absolutely rock steady. And just, I feel like her stature and her stance on the bike and her body language is just, you know, you could look at everybody else starting to absolutely hang behind, and, you know, they're starting to move around so much on the bike, and she's just there, like, not moving her shoulders, looking so, I mean, if you could call it comfortable on a gradient like that, she did look as comfortable as you could possibly be on a climb. But did she just think, right, this is the position I want to be in, this is something she's done before, I want to ride it from the front? Could it have gone differently if she didn't ride it in the way that she did from the front? I mean, I think ultimately she did everything she could, but it was a bit heartbreaking to see her then not take a podium spot basically in the top three.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because I think she had the legs today to finish on the podium for the stage, but the way that she used her effort probably could have been used differently, because she was the only Liv Lulajeka rider left in that group, and she didn't really need to be doing the pacemaking at that point. I think had she not gone on the front, we would have seen, like, maybe Gaia Riolini would have been on the front doing some work to kind of keep the pace high so that Kopecky couldn't attack Elisa Longoborghini, for example, because now Kopecky's only 13 seconds down on GC from Elisa. So Garcia, she didn't need to be doing that work. I think the energy could have been used better, because she could have had more energy for an attack later on. But I also think she was feeling really good. Sometimes when your legs are feeling that good, you just got to send it. And she did, and it didn't work. And maybe she'll feel, I mean, I think if she can ride like that again over the weekend when we have the big climbing stages, then she's a real contender for a podium in those stages. And the GC might be a bit hard for her to, you know, get at that point. She's a minute and a half down, and for her to gain like a minute and a half on Elisa in those stages, we're going to have to see how things play out. But yeah, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, because do you use your legs when they're feeling good, or do you play the long game and get out sprinted by Lotte Kopecky in the end?
That's the thing, isn't it? Because we'd be saying something completely differently if it had paid off, and sometimes in the past we have seen it pay off. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting take, because she just went full commitment. I mean, she was evidently feeling very, very fresh, very good legs, but it was interesting, and ultimately that dictated the end of the race. I mean, it was absolutely pivotal in splintering that group down. So many riders just absolutely losing contact, completely just gone. Cecilia Ludwig came off the back, and then what I love about her, obviously, you know, we're just delighted to have her back from such a long road to recovery, aren't we? But what I love about her, like, tactical head is she rode herself back on when there was a slight lull and then just went straight over the top and tried to go, didn't she?
It was a great moment. And honestly, like, great legs from her today. She finished 8th on the stage, 14 seconds down, with Niamh Bradbury, who's Canyon SRAM's, maybe number 1, number 2 GC. It's unclear at the moment. They're kind of maybe seeing how things play out with Antonia Niedermeyer, who rode really, really well today again and held on to that youth classification. But for Cecily coming back from injury and not having a great build up into this, I think she would have wanted to see more results before this point. As someone like who has the ambition she has, it doesn't matter if you're coming back from injury, you want to see the results on the page. There's no logic involved. It's like a pure athletic drive. So she'll be really happy with how today went and finishing 8th on the stage. I think she'll be thrilled with where her form is at and how it's going to build over time. And it was not the hardest climb of the race, but it did do some serious damage. And I think a lot of that had to do with the heat. Elisa said after the stage that it was really hot, which is maybe why we saw Brodie Chapman struggling earlier in the climb, because I think we would have expected her to get farther into that climb and be there to support Elisa. Like if she'd been there, Mavi never would have had to touch the front, So I think there was a lot of riders today that struggled in the heat, and it will impact the race going forward, because I do really think that group could have been way bigger going into the point where Mavi attacked.
Yeah, it's a good point, because I think we kind of came in with question marks to today. We kind of wanted all our questions answered with the first hilltop finish, didn't we? And as you say, there's so much more big mountain, high elevation to come, namely the blockhouse. I'm just absolutely buzzing. I know it's a little way away and we're not getting onto that yet, but I'm really buzzing for it, because I just think the sheer climbing this year is just absolutely epic. But I do think, like, today we were looking, weren't we, for all these answers, like who's going to be there, who isn't. But I do agree that the heat had much more of an impact than we could probably appreciate. I mean, I'm not personally there on the ground, and I think on the TV screens you can't necessarily, apart from seeing everything that the riders are trying to do to combat that heat, you can't fully appreciate the effects of it. But you do see riders, like we've seen the best riders in the world, crack under conditions before, and just even the effects of not being able to take on board as much nutrition and hydration as you'd like in that sort of conditions, and not, you kind of, even at that level, have to keep reminding or being reminded to actually take on board nutrition, don't you? Because it can be the last thing that you feel like doing in like the sheer heat. But I do think there were effects of that, but I still think, and you briefly nodded to it, it did tell us a lot about this GC potential.
Yeah, I want to hear really quick from a rider on the ground. I don't know if she's going to mention the heat, because spoiler alert, it's maybe 45 minutes after the stage ended, and I won't get her audio diary for another 4 hours probably. But Letizia Borghesi of EF-Oatly-Cannondale was a rider who was in the race. Let's see what she has to say.
Hi, I am Letizia Borghesi of EF-Oatly-Cannondale, and today we rode the third stage of this Giro d'Italia. It was a special stage for me because we passed close to the city of Reggio Emilia, where I have a lot of relatives, so I had a special support on the roads, and yeah, it was definitely a really tough one, because the heat was crazy, and we rode in the oven for 3 hours. It was 36 degrees, so yeah, it was really extreme. And personally, I struggled a little bit with some stomach problem in the first part, but we were committed to help our GC rider in this first uphill finish. But unfortunately, we ended up to being out of the general classification, because she had a really bad day, but from now on the Giro will be even more exciting, and we are ready to fight for some stage results. And yeah, I cannot wait to give my everything and try to achieve these goals.
Mareille Meijering brought us into the episode with an audio diary she recorded before the stage, but she also recorded one after the stage. So let's hear from her.
Stage 3 was a very, 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 very hot. From the start, it was like really fast paced, trying to get into a breakaway, but nothing really went. So it was quite, fast to pay attention and try to stay out of trouble. The team did a really great job of keeping me and Claire in the front all day and out of the wind. And they did a perfect lead out to the start of the climb. So I was in a good position when we started the climb. But there, I think Canyon SRAM immediately set a high pace. So it was just try to stay within your own limits and keeping a steady pace, trying to follow. And it was going really well. But I think you could see with everyone that it was super hot, and that was the hardest part of the day and of the climb, I think, because the climb was not super steep, but the hot conditions made it a super hard stage. So super important to drink a lot and stay hydrated, and after the stage, get fueled again, fill up those carbs for tomorrow, another day. And just, put your legs up and eat. And that's the best thing to recover.
All right. So one of the biggest questions that we have coming out of this stage, I feel like, is Kopecky a threat?
Oof.
She's 13 seconds down on Elisa Longo-Borghini going into the fourth stage. Her taking the leader's jersey off of Elisa on the fourth stage is a real possibility. It's a really, really hard finish to the stage. 3 climbs back to back to back. And the finish is at the top of the third climb. So it's not going to be an easy day by any means. In some ways, even harder than the third stage. And I feel like based on how Little Trek is riding at the moment, they are not going to care if a group goes up the road that has no threats in it. And it might be a stage that's 2 races, a race for the GC and a race for the stage, because they've not been interested in controlling the pace of the peloton. We saw that on stage 2. But they're going to be, I think, a little worried about Kopecky. Only 13-second buffer, and she rode like she did today. I would be worried.
I agree. It could become a complete race within the race, as we see time and time again across pro cycling, men and women's, that actually the GC favourites are going to all have an eye on each other. So it could interestingly play out like you say tomorrow. In Kopecky's post-race interview, of course, she was like laughing off the idea of a stage win slightly, wasn't she? Saying, well, look at the climbs tomorrow. It's a very hard day. However, and I roll out so many cliches of statements when it comes to Kopecky, because she just never ceases to amaze me. And I mean, you and I were stood on the Tourmalet at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift last year, or definitely in the lead up to that stage, weren't we, saying, well, she's already just climbed better than our expectations, and then coming into this season just climbing so well. Today it was a massive question mark, but look at her, look how fresh she was when she crossed that line. I do think she's a threat, and I just never think we can ever say never with Lotte Kopecky. I don't think we can ever discount her. I mean, they've already taken a stage victory as a team, but we know they always want everything. They want the kitchen sink from every race. But I just wouldn't discount her. And, Little Trek has such an intelligent team in the way they plan and race and observe. So they're certainly not going to turn their head away from her.
Been very coy with their plans for this race, saying that they're going for stage wins and they're not interested in the general classification. But I don't buy it for a second, because they also said, like, when Anna van der Breggen came out of retirement, she was like, I don't have my eye on any particular race. I'm just going to come back and have fun. Yeah, I'm calling a bullshit on that, because already that's been proven to be a lie, because the teams come out and said, no, we want her to win races. So I don't believe Kopecky or the team for a second that they're not interested in the general classification. If she's like sitting there right now looking at a 13-second gap between her and Pink, and there is a possibility that she can take Pink, she's going to do it. She's a bike racer. And I think there's a real chance that she could win this race. The test is going to be stage 7, which isn't until Saturday. But there's definitely a chance that she can take the jersey off of Elisa before Saturday.
For that, yeah. And I think that's the telling day, isn't it? The Queen's Stage, the Blockhouse final. It's going to be, as I mentioned before, absolutely brutal. And it's such a day for out and out pure climber, which is why we've looked at the likes of Kopecky and said, right, it's not a day that she would be looking at. But I do agree that certainly at this point, and as much as she's said so many times, hasn't she? Stage by stage, day by day, we're only looking at stages. But we've had her do this before, playing down her chances. And as you say, like, if that's in sight, she's obviously going to try and go for it. Just remarkable once again, really. But yeah, I think there's certainly an opportunity before Blockhouse.
Well, tomorrow's her first opportunity. There's the final climb is 13K to go, and the first 2 climbs before that finale are both pretty steep, kind of stair-step each other, and are quite long if you kind of add up the kilometers together. And then that final climb is gradual, like today. So if there's a climb that she can get over and then sprint to victory at the end of, it's that final climb. So it's going to be a real fight tomorrow, and we will be back to talk about it on the Wheel Talk podcast. But we're going to sign out today with an audio diary from none other than the stage winner herself, Niamh Fisher-Black. Thanks so much for joining me, Rebecca.
On that note, thanks for having me.
Hey, wow, you managed to get me on a good day, huh? Stage 3. Wow, what a day. Sorry, I'm going to be a little bit lost for words because it's not every day these days come around, Cycling's such an up and down sport, and I've really, really been determined the last few weeks, and it just feels so good to pull it off. So yeah, a bit about the stage. It was hot day in Italy, and yeah, one of those days where you just had to stay focused the whole day because the climb was it was flat until the climb, which was the last 12K, and you had to rely on your teammates so much. I mean, for ice, for water, for everything, and it's just one of those days that just proves that it's really a team sporter. And coming to the top of this climb with both Lotta and I there in a small group, I don't know, I can't describe the feeling. It was just like, I just knew that we had it. I was confident in Lotta if it came to a little group finish, and I also knew that there was so much opportunity from that point for myself. So I don't know, I just had a moment. I just didn't think, my legs felt good. I just went with it and just let the road speak to me, and man, it's a crazy feeling, those days that just kind of just play out as they go. And so it feels really good. And but it's a funny thing about stage racing. I can bask in my moment of glory for a little bit, but there's another stage tomorrow, and I'll be wearing the blue jersey, and Lotta is second on GC, and I'm 5th, so it's a really nice position to be in 4 stages into the race. And I'm just really excited, not putting too much pressure on it, and just gonna enjoy this stage race because that's what it's about. And so far so good. So speak to you later.